Vero, if you can make a co-host to the speaker, Enrique and Magali, and Claire, please. Thank you.
Okay, so let's start. Hi everyone, I'm Flor Serale. I'm civil society co-chair at the implementation working group. For the ones joining today for the first time, the implementation working group meets once in a month, and our focus is to discuss how we can better implement the ODC principles into our own projects. So today I'm really pleased to be moderating a session around open data for innovation and service delivery. And for the ones that don't know, ODC Principle 6 talks about open data for innovation. So we've been historically focusing on how open data can increase transparency and accountability, but we haven't done a really good job around innovation and how open data can actually ensures a better service delivery, better services, and innovative business models. So today I am happy to be moderating this panel, where we will have 3 panelists that will talk about service delivery and innovation. So today we will start with Enrique Zapata, who is Data Intelligence, GovTech, and Open Government Coordinator at CAF. And Enrique will focus on the use of data in GovTech projects in Latin America. Secondly, we have Magali Gurman, who works at the Public Affairs team at Glovo and focuses on explainability projects, and we'll talk about open data from the private sector perspective. And last but not least, today we have Claire Bedoui, who is a principal consultant at Public Digital, and her focus will be around open data to improve public service delivery. So her focus will be around the opportunities and challenges of developing and using data from the government's perspective. So as you know, we have English to Spanish translation. Feel free whenever you intervene to talk in Spanish if you need so. After the panel, we will have a Q&A, but also we would encourage you to talk about your own challenges and which projects you are currently working in. And yeah, I think that's it. Let's start with the discussion. So Enrique, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Flor. Can you give me, please, access to sharing my screen, please?
Yes. Just a sec.
Sure.
Okay. Can you now?
Yes, amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you for Flor and everyone in the charter and everyone attending for inviting me to talk about service delivery and GovTech and some of the ideas that we from the Development Bank of Latin America are promoting in the region, but also around the world, to really increase the use of data through this new model that we are calling GovTech. So what is GovTech? The answer depends on who you ask. If you ask, for example, the World Bank, they will tell you that GovTech equals government technology, and that basically digital government is the same as GovTech, and that this is just another world or a hype, a fashionable way of keeping the promotion of what open government has been doing so far in the world. If you ask, for example, the IDB, the answer would be that GovTech relates more to smart cities and the way that some innovations, but not all, can be implemented specifically for local challenges. What we from CAF, along with many other actors in the GovTech world, agreed upon is this definition, which is a new service delivery model in which 2 actors, governments and data-driven startups, collaborate and work to solve public problems with data and new technologies. So the reason why we decided, along with this number of other important actors from the academic sector, civil society, but especially with startups in the private sector, is to avoid just renaming what we've been doing so far and actually proposing something new. And the new thing about this proposal is the part of new service delivery model. And this is what I want to talk about today. The model looks like this. This is the ecosystem. As I was saying, you have two parts. You have the government, the startups, and in the middle you have the connecting vessels that permits or enables that relationship to be. And those connecting vessels are, from one side, data, because it's the building block of every single digital technology that we have in the world as of now. And the other connecting vessel is procurement, because that enables the contractual relationship between government and private sector. And with that contractual relationship, it actually enables a diverse set of authority and delivery mechanisms that I will not be talking, but that are very important when you're talking about how to increase service delivery with technology. What we see as innovative in this ecosystem or in this proposal is, first, that we are actually focusing in startups. And the reason why we chose to focus on startups is that we see that in Latin America and many parts of the world, and Europe is big in the govtech ecosystem, these kind of startups are the ones that are using and increasing the adoption of data and its use with new exponential technologies such as blockchain, data science, drones, artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. And as we in the world increasingly see new and very specific uses of these technologies, the more that we see that new startups are developing or are developing in the world that use these specific technologies for specific problems. The other thing that we see as innovative in this model is that we're focusing on a very specific problems that are the wicked problems, right? You know, in the literature, wicked problems are those that do not necessarily have a specific solution that can be generalized for every single problem in every single part of the world, and that instead ask for local communities or national communities to really understand the contexts in which they develop and in which they work, to understand what their challenges are specifically related to these wicked problems, climate change, for example, gender equality, for example, and so on and so forth, but also to understand the capacities that they have. And this part of capacities is very important for us, because what we see from the Development Bank of Latin America is that governments everywhere in the world, but in our region, are suffering from a very specific problem, which is the lack of capacity to act. And to really try to understand more in depth what service delivery with govtech means, we've been developing a report that we have not yet published. It will be published in maybe 2 or 3 months, around the role of govtech in the achievement of sustainable development goals. And what we're really looking at is what specific startups are using what specific technologies and data to solve very specific problems. And if you like, and this, I can kind of cater these 5 insights specifically for this meeting. But we have 5 main kind of outcomes out of this report. The first one is that data is the main driver of govtech businesses. This is something that may be obvious for us, but it's not obvious for governments, and it's not obvious for the startups. When governments and startups think about what they do, they think about the problems and they think about the technologies. They are not thinking about that which fits into the technology, which is the specific data that they're using to do whatever they are going to use. So this is a very important and very relevant insight for us, because that means that we really need to increase the understanding of why data is being used and why data is the building block of any digital thing that you try to build today. The second one is that govtech promote open government data reusability, right? And this is something that has been one of the main pain points of the open data ecosystem everywhere in the world. And I will talk more about this in a couple of slides. The third one is that this generates new data sources for the public sector. So you have these startups not only using public open data and also data that is not public, but also generating new high quality data sets that in most cases can be released again as open data. And in some other cases, you would need to aggregate and do some other things, but they are developing new data sources. And this fits into this new narrative around the promotion of open data trusts and these new kind of governance mechanisms that enable the use of many sources of data towards the same objective. So this is being very important for governments and these kind of startups. The fourth one is that this use of data is creating public value and economic development. When I see public value, what I mean is return on investment. We see returns on investment, for example, of 700% in Argentina, more than 50% in Colombia. We see that governments are being able to increase taxes in Mexico through the use of these technologies or these innovative approaches to the use of data with startups. And this is being a very powerful narrative specifically for governments and specifically for those in finance ministries. When you go and talk with finance ministries with the narrative and with the discourse that this is a social good and that this is a public good and the data is this and that, they maybe understand, maybe not, in most of the cases not, but when you go with a narrative that what you're trying to do will increase the savings or will increase the government treasuries, then you have a very specific kind of attention that in most parts of the world is very attractive to governments. And the second part, economic development, is that through the diversification of government procurement and spending, the diversification of government spending through procurement, and very specifically to the SME sector, governments are able not only to increase capacities through govtech, but also to promote new economic sector that is of data-driven SMEs. And the last one is that these projects are centered in use and impact around data, which is important. Just to say a couple of examples of what we found, these are only a few of all that we found. We basically found that there are startups doing something around each of the 17 SDGs, and not only for the 17 SDGs, but on all the single objectives between or inside each of the objectives, right? So Aquasmic in Mexico using satellite data and artificial intelligence to understand the quality of water in the Mexican Gulf. Connect Robotics in Portugal, which is using data, geographic data to automate service delivery in the region, which we found also being something very important in Rwanda, for example, for the delivery of blood in mountainous regions, or for example, in other parts of Latin America that are using drones to promote smart, riego inteligente, I don't know how you say this, smart agriculture.
Smart farming?
Yeah, smart
irrigation, smart irrigation.
Using increasingly sensors and Internet of Things to automate how service delivery in for trash recollection and other services in the city of Bogota, of Lima, and of Caracas are working. And they realize that they're not only increasing the efficiency of how governments work, they are also increasing, for example, the times that the places that a single truck can recollect trash in a single day, which is very important, and governments did not know how to understand or how to tackle. Green urban data in Spain, which is a database for environmental parameters, and that it's being very important, for example, for the Horizon 2020 in Europe, and the efforts that the region is doing to understand how to tackle the risk of climate change in Europe. And lastly, Munidigital in Argentina, which is an app so the citizens can georeference between other many things, trees at the municipal level, and really understand what green assets they have in the cities, and also to tell governments when, for example, the construction of a building is just como se llama, talando árboles, how do you say that? Eliminating the trees in a certain region, right? So this is only some couple of examples that we found. And what I found, and this is the last slide, very interesting about this government approach, and also thinking about the Open Data Charter and what we as a data ecosystem have as the most important challenge, which is use, is that it is a policy that can complement the way that we are thinking and designing open data policies around the world. So I'm sure that everyone has already seen the results of the Open Data Barometer. And this is a very important thing, right? The use and impact has always been the challenge. It's chronicle. It's a chronic disease that we have. An explanation could be, and this is the popular explanation, is that the governments are not doing enough to promote skills and to promote reusability in other sectors. That is what we've been saying for 10 years now. I want to propose another understanding, and that is that given that open data policies are focused in the right of access of information, what we're seeing here is the success of what we've been doing so far. If we've been asking governments to promote open data policies around access, they will promote policies around access, not around use. And regardless of everything that we say, and regardless of very specific efforts to promote usability, you will never have an organic growth of usability. And instead, what we're seeing everywhere in the world is a fictitious promotion of data, because governments are artificially promoting this use. So this GovTech service delivery model, along with many others, but this specifically can serve really as a complement of this only access approach towards the delivery and the design of open data policies. And what we're seeing so far is that evidence supports the idea that GovTech can promote organic growth of data reusability around the world. Said in another way, and maybe in a simpler terms, what GovTech is proposing is to make inverse the way that we construct data policies. Instead of first constructing a general access to all kinds of data sets and then expecting for very specific uses to go and grab on those data sets, what you're doing is to build the open data specifically first with the intensive users in that sector, with the principles of open data by default and so on and so forth, and then expect the generality of the public to maybe use the data, but maybe don't, as they're doing as of now. And maybe that could be a way of kind of leaping forward in the use of data and impact. From CAF, we've been putting out some publications on these, on the principles of GovTech and how GovTech is around the world through this GovTech Index 2020 and another index that will come later this year, and another one in 2023, and some reports that are both in English and Spanish around the state of GovTech in Latin America, but also the European Union has just released some very important ones around the GovTech ecosystem in the European Union, and some other around the basic kind of levers that you can use to promote GovTech ecosystems and through that data, such as innovation, procurement, and some others. So this is what I wanted to share with you. I hope that this was clear and that you see GovTech a complement of what data policies are doing to specifically promote use and innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Enrique. And there are already some comments in the chat. We can then continue a discussion around the value of data and how specific policies that are aimed at enabling ecosystems are really necessary to ensure we are actually using the data that we are opening up. So I'll leave it there, and then we can continue a discussion after our two panelists. So now I'm jumping to Magali. Magali, I gave you co-host permissions. I'm not sure whether you are sharing a presentation or not, but whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Yes, I am. Thanks, Flor. Let me just. Vale. There we go. Are you seeing my presentation? Yes? Vale. Thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here. And thanks, Enrique, for your presentation. It was very interesting. And I actually think that it gives me a good context for now to address this issue from the private sector, which is what I'm going to be talking about through the experience of Glovo. So Glovo is a tech platform with the vision to give everyone easy access to anything in their city. Basically, it's a platform where users, couriers, and businesses connect. So users get online to buy things, couriers get online to deliver things, and businesses to sell things. So just for you to have kind of a reference on how much volume the app has right now, we are operating in 25 countries and in more than 1,200 cities. We have more than 72K couriers online and 130K partners. So it's a very big community of people selling, delivering, and buying, which results in a lot of different data sets. And my name is Magali Gurman, and I work in the public affairs team. My scope of work is very specific. I actually work in projects that aim at better explaining Glovo. And of course, data has always been a very important asset in this effort to better explain Glovo, because in the gig economy, we are often talking about data, about how much data platforms are producing, what are we doing with data, whether we're using it to feed it to machine learning models, whether we can share it, and as Enrique was explaining, foster their use to define public policies, etc. So data is actually we frequently are asked about our data, and we at Glovo talk about data a lot, but we have some challenges, and that's what I'm going to address right now. So for anyone that doesn't know Glovo, because maybe it doesn't operate in your countries, our competitors or similar companies are Uber Eats, Pedido allá in Latin America, Deliveroo. So maybe now you get a better sense of the kind of business that we are in. So data in the platform economy. Why is it that we are interested in being part of this conversation? So as I was saying, the platform economy has scaled very quickly in the last 10 to 6 years. So we generated a lot of data. What type of data are you may be wondering? So we have data about our operations, so volume of sellings, how much burgers we are selling in a city, what types of products are being bought in a specific neighbor, etc. We also have demographic data about our users, our couriers. These are governed by GDPR, but yeah, okay, we can go into that later, but we have it. We also have data on our businesses, what types of businesses they are, who are the owners, what types of business are more frequent in Spain, in Romania, in Africa, etc. Then platform economy is an ideal ground testing because we are basically present in cities. So our operations are city-based. This means that we looked at operations on a city basis. That means we're very close to many like social and economic issues, and we generate that data to kind of inform of them. For example, traffic. We know what road a courier is taking, and we know in what neighborhoods, I don't know, fried chicken is being bought. And last but not least, in general, platforms are innovative spaces because we're always trying to be and they have the newest technology, and we're always trying to try new things. So in general, we're very open to trying innovative projects. At Glovo, in this context of platform economy, we have our own data objectives. First, we wanted to kind of use our data to tell Glovo stories and give context and foster this explainability project that I was mentioning at the beginning. We also wanted to structure our data to promote data sharing, because right now we're only using our data for business matters. So we are aware that if we want someone else to use our data, we need to kind of structure it in a way that it's useful for the other party. And then we want to fulfill and service demands for information about our industry, the gig economy. So we are doing a lot of different projects on data. We are collaborating with universities. We've also collaborated with some governments. For example, in Romania, we actually provided the data to define the bike lane. But our star project is our own data portal, which I'm going to show you right now, which is basically our own channel where we want to publish open data sets, that people can download as a CVS, and also start telling like Glovo stories through our data to foster the knowledge about the industry and make everyone know Glovo better. So this is the beta version, but I'm giving you a sneak peek. This is kind of like the stories about Glovo that we want to tell through our data. So how orders are growing, kind of like our milestones in terms of international expansion, but then also showing how many couriers are connecting through the app year after year, how many businesses, users, our employees and teams, and how many partners are joining our app, and what are the category of these partners, whether they are big chains or small chains, SMEs, like what type of industry they are in, how many woman-owned business are partners at Glovo, etc. It's a very long data. It's a very long visualization, so I'm not going to show it, but now you get a sense of it. And then we have in the same webpage or raw data that anyone can download. For example, if we go to orders in Ukraine, we can see the columns in the table. So order ID, customer ID, this is our anonymized, country name, how long the delivery took, what was the distance driven, where was it delivered. And we are publishing right now 9 data sets with different types of columns. So this is kind of our main project on data, because we want to use it as kind of like a way to open up and continue to do more and more projects and kind of grow this community of people that are using Glovo's data. You're back to my presentation, right? Well, perfect. So as I was saying, the data portal is kind of like the kickoff for us for next things to do with our data. For example, to cross data, so integrated with other companies and other data institutions' data. We also, in the future, want to help through our data to academia, NGOs, partners. As I was saying, we are working with some universities, but right now, because our data is not structured for that, it's a bit difficult, but we're doing it. We're getting there. We also want to contribute by showing the trends that we can visualize that we can get through our data, both global and local. And in the long run, we would like to have like an internal think tank where we can, through our data, kind of discover, I don't know, what's coming for the gig economy, what if there's any like public policy we can help design to a government, etc. So challenges, because I was told that I shouldn't come here just to tell a nice story. I should also show the bad side. So there are a few challenges that we're trying to address, not all related to the data portal, but data in general. So first, and I think this is an issue for us, but it might be an issue for other industries, the fact that we are new and very competitive is an issue for us, because this means that data on the gig economy is very scarce. Often it's not like maybe the banking industry that has been regulated for long and it's been going on for years and there's more data and information. So whatever we publish, it's very delicate, and the corporate development team at Glovo is very careful on this, because they know that any information that we give might jeopardize market share or might hurt Glovo competitive wise. We also have trade secrets, also not only a problem for us, but it's something that we've dealt with because some data is protected by trade secrets and we cannot share even if we want to, at least not publicly in a data portal. Then of course that takes us to the whole GDPR privacy issue, which I understand it's also an issue for some of the people in this group. We have a lot of information that we couldn't ever publish or provide to anyone because it's subject to GDPR standards. And I mean, last but not least, we yet weren't able to find right partners to share our data. So here, everything that Enrique explained is very relevant because we often found ourselves offering our data to governments, NGOs, even other companies, and maybe we don't know how to communicate our data or they don't know how to use it, but there wasn't, I mean, a few times we had like a good sync between us and the party we wanted to share data with. So we're kind of working on that, on how we should, present our data or to whom. That's why, in order to kind of kick off the Q&A, I'm leaving you some questions here. We don't need to answer this now, Flor, I know, but just for later. But for example, what data would you need? What data do you have that could be crossed with Glovo? How would you like to use our data? These are questions that were being asked. So feel free to, ask me about any data we might have. And as a conclusion, I would say that we are proactively looking for spaces to kind of place our data, and so that our data is used. So whatever idea you may have, feel free to ping me. If you know a friend from other country, also you can give them my contact. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maga. And you have a great point in terms of trying to open data, firstly, for who, based on the demand, but also trying to think which other governance models can be there in order to connect people actually demanding the data and that will really reuse it and also use it as a public value and to solve their own problems, right? So I encourage everyone in the session here to write to Maga. Maga, please put your email in the chat just in case we don't have enough time for the discussion. But I would like now to introduce Claire again. Claire, I don't know if you have a presentation. I gave you co-host permission. So whenever you're ready.
Great. Yes,
we can see.
Thank you. Amazing. All right. So my name is Claire Bedoui. I'm a consultant at Public Digital, and Public Digital is a digital transformation consultancy. We're based in London, but we work with a network of about 80 digital experts all across the world who specialize in fields like service design, technical architecture, data science, product management, just to name a few. So what we do is help large organizations, mostly in the public sector, at every stage of their digital transformation, from strategy making to service delivery. And we do this by building and empowering digital teams in government. We believe this is the only way to create sustainable change, hence our theory of change, digital teams work. So I said that we work with central governments, but we also work with cities. And last September, thanks to the support of the Bloomberg Philanthropies Program, we worked with the city of Brussels around the topic of data. So just to give you a bit more context, a small team in the organization department of the city of Brussels had been working on a smart city strategy. And in this strategy, they laid out very big ambitions, but they realized there was a gap between what they wanted to achieve and their actual capabilities. So they asked us to help them do a diagnostic of their data capabilities and create alignments on what they should prioritize to unlock the use of data, both for service delivery and policymaking. So in the next few minutes, I'd like to share with you some of our reflections and findings from the data capability diagnostic, which I just want to highlight early on are not specific at all to the city of Brussels, but very common to public sector organizations. So in the first few weeks of our engagement with Brussels, we interviewed about 20 people from each department. And the one thing that we heard over and over was that there was a lack of coordination between departments, which were working in silos, and that made data sharing very difficult. There was no easy way to get an overview of the data available in departments. So for example, the public buildings department had been working on a database that listed most of the public buildings in the city, and they realized afterwards that another department had been working on a similar database that included buildings like schools. And another thing was that even when people knew about the databases of all the departments, there was no shared data taxonomy across departments. So even sometimes within one department, the green spaces department actually had just invested a lot of time in developing their own data taxonomy after they realized colleagues used different terms for trees and park names. So it took people lots of time and manual work to match and clean data before being able to use it. But the city of Brussels had a chief data officer, and he had done a great job at starting to put together a data catalog, a data governance model, but they just were not used, and he was struggling to get the buy-in of departments and the city's leadership. And this is linked to another of our findings, which was that for a lot of people, the benefits of using data were a bit abstract. I mean, people were enthusiastic about the ambitions of the Smart City project, like creating a digital twin or collecting data on people flow, but these projects were not outcome-based. So the city's leadership didn't see very clearly how data could create value, which made it hard for them to prioritize investments and recruitments in this field. But it was not all doom and gloom, actually far from it. There was a growing level of data awareness in some departments where people had started to work on database services like assessing the need for new nurseries based on demographic data or prioritizing public access buildings to inspect. But because of the lack of capabilities and governance, the difficulty with this project was that there were often one-off services that were not meant to last. We interviewed someone who said, like, people would use data that's most easily available rather than what makes most sense from a long-term perspective. And another result of this was that the city's geographic information system team was overwhelmed with one-off requests to map data that had been manually collected or aggregated, which make it really hard to keep track of what and how data was used. Now, at Public Digital, we like to talk about what we call the concept of data as a service. And by data as a service, we mean moving beyond providing open data through data portals to providing access to data in a way that better supports user needs, either government needs like supporting decision-making, or the needs of the wider community and private companies. And to ensure these needs, public sector organizations need to think about the whole service that they're providing, not just access to data. If they're aiming for services that support decision-making, then it's not just about providing the data or a nice map, but they need to put some support around it. That might look like documentation, might look like training, but it certainly involves doing user research and running surveys to understand how the services are being used and how to make them better over time. Now, good open data teams and portals already do a lot of these things, but the point here is that data as a service perspective means not just building a data service, but all the things around it that make sure it gets used well. And I think that these quotes summarizing quite well these concepts. So Theo Blackwell, who's London Chief digital officer said that what's more important than the number of data sets is the methodology of how you run purpose-led data projects around the data needs that have emerged from teams. And data as a service is about working from an identified needs. And this approach is actually a bit different from what we've seen in a lot of data projects, either across central or city governments. So data as a service is a strategic approach that focuses on what will make a difference rather than what's easy. It's about publishing data with a purpose in mind, not just data that the city government holds. And that means also providing access to data held by other parts of the public sector, perhaps at the national level for cities, or even data from third parties. And that also means embedding the provision of data as a sustainable service rather than doing one-off projects like the ones I've mentioned. And this leads us to the main point I'd just like to make here is that data services should be developed like any other digital service. And the challenges I've been talking about, like breaking silos, understanding user needs, creating end-to-end services, these are things that digital service teams do. So we like to think digital and data capabilities need to better be brought together and use a shared approach to meeting user needs and building sustainable services. By meeting user needs, I mean like public sector organizations need to understand the target user, what they're trying to do, how the use of data fits the broader set of things they're trying to achieve, what tools they have at their disposal. And as public organizations build database services, they need to test them with users, make sure it's really working for them. Because it can be actually easy to overwhelm people with information, present data just because organizations have it, but without a clear idea of how people use it. And it's only through testing that organizations can see what people really need to know and how best to provide it for them. And yeah, the last point about sustainability, sorry, I'm rushing a bit because I see time is ticking and it'd be great to have some time for discussion. But by sustainability, we think it's really important to provide reliable services that stay up to date, don't suddenly disappear. So from a delivery point of view, that requires having a team in-house responsible for the service and constantly keeping it up to date, improving it over time. That also means having a budget line to support them and having a long-term view about priorities, because focusing on sustainability also means that organizations can't hop around creating lots of new things all the time. They need to properly invest over long-term in services that are going to make a difference to city and its residents. So very quickly, going back to Brussels, at the end of our engagement, we made some recommendations, and one of our main suggestions, considering their context also and maturity, was to reshuffle the organization to bring digital and data capabilities together in a central team under the leadership of a single chief digital and data officer. The idea behind this was really to build end-to-end and sustainable data services. But a central team can't do everything. So another important thing we've recommended and actually started doing with the city of Brussels during our engagement was to break the silos between the departments by inviting people to come together and share what data services they've been working on, share learnings, failures, good practices, and inspire each other. So you can see on the screen, this is first cross-department show and tell that we facilitated, where people from departments presented a few projects, and we actually very much hope that's sort of a founding event of a in-house data community of practice, but a bit like this one. But I'll stop here. I think I've talked enough, and thanks you all.
Thank you, Claire. And you mentioned many of the things that we've been discussing throughout the year. For example, publishing with a purpose, breaking silos, which is super important, and also building capabilities inside government to make things happen and to sustain changes. So I'm aware that we have 10 minutes for our Q&A and discussion, but we might end 5 minutes later if everyone agrees with that. So I will now give the floor to anyone that has questions. Remember, there's a translation to English, so if anyone wants to make a comment or speak in Spanish, feel free to do so. And yeah, let's start with the Q&As. If everyone is has any questions or any comments or reflects on the three panelists that we had today. No questions? No comments?
Maybe someone that share. Sorry.
Philip.
Yes.
Philip. Or
yeah, sure. I don't know that I have any specific questions, but I could provide some comments. But first, I just wanted to thank everyone for presenting. This has been super helpful and informative, and it's great to see all the work being done. Just to share some of my own personal perspectives and from some experience in the US. I'm happy to drop some links to just some relevant initiatives that are happening in the US context. Although, I think like everyone, we still have a lot of work to do to make progress in this space. But I think there's some good momentum underway that I'm happy to share with some links. And I think this comment has been raised a few times, but one of my personal strong sort of opinions and principles in this space is having a good balance between the use of data and the use of more qualitative user-centered design research. That those two things are best done separately but together, and that there in some cases are risks of an over-reliance on data as an example, as a method for performance measurement around improving service delivery. So I think having a more comprehensive approach that includes data along with more in-depth traditional user research and human-centered design practices and principles is kind of the best of both worlds. So that's just one personal sort of approach and principle that I always like to emphasize in these contexts. So yeah, just wanted to share that comment and thought, and happy to drop some links to the extent that we still have time to do so, and happy to follow up more later as well.
Thank you, Philip. Please do. Then we are going to send an email with all the links that have been shared. So I saw someone that opened the mic and then unmuted. I don't know if anyone has another comment, another reflection to do.
Add a point if nobody else has a point to make.
Okay,
okay.
Great.
Hi, everybody. My name is not actually Untitled Chapter. My name is Peck. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm joining late. I just wanted to comment on the notion of centralizing services. And Claire, part of what you were talking about, I think one could also describe that as reorganization towards internal forms of consulting. So from a centralized hub to internal stakeholders across the government. That is something that is also quite popular, I would say, in the North American realm as well. The question here is really around empowerment, or like how much we're actually changing culture and getting people to take ownership over their own data problems as well. So what I wonder is whether the approach to providing services allows public servants to divest themselves of the data problems for which they are maybe the owners, because they are maybe responsible for that particular portfolio, for generating the data, managing or making decisions in that realm. So I'd be interested in your comments on sort of the independence of different units, like a parks department, like a public works department. And secondly, some of this we've seen with GIS in the past, where GIS departments are the ones who have specialized in handling spatial data, in creating cartographic outputs for other units as well. And that can be a very specialized type of skill set. How do we ensure that when we go towards this type of data services model, that we actually have all the right kinds of skill sets that we need in order to serve all the different types of stakeholders within a government? Because not all data is the same or requires the same kinds of skill sets from the point of view of the central hub that's providing the services. So that's just a general point to Claire or anybody else who wants to comment.
Yeah, thanks. Very, very happy to add on this. I think it is a really great point. And just to highlight, like, I don't think there's one right model. I think it's really up to each organization. So the context of Brazil was really specific to the fact there was at the beginning of the data journey. It's a way to say it. But yeah, so I think central teams have can play different roles. They can deliver services, but the way I like to say it is like empowering departments to actually keep ownership of services, make sure they're sustainable. So it's more about giving them the tools, the ways working together really closely, and then handing over the service to the department, but making sure they develop it together. And eventually there should be, I think, data capabilities in each department, because they're the ones who know about how data can be used and what data should be used. But yes, I don't think there's one sort of secret recipe, and I think it's up to each organization to see what's best adapted to their specific needs and maturity organization.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Beck, for your comment. Any other question or? I think no. I assume we don't have any more comments. So thanks, Philip, for sharing all the links. So I think at this point, let's wrap up the session. I would like to thank the three of you for your presentations today. It's been like really inspiring. We will probably do a blog around this to synthesize what we have learned and everything. You already left your email, so just in case like anyone in the call has any comments, just to follow up with you guys. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining today, and well, have a nice end of the day. For me, it's 9 p.m. in Italy, so enjoy. Thank you so much, and see you next month.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you to all our speakers, and hello to everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.